How's it going? My name's Matthew, aka EZBOT, and we're back with Electron Talk, episode 37. I know, it's a lot. Today, we're going to talk about the performance templates that I've made on the Octatrack and that many of you have used and edited and reverse engineered and used to create your own templates. And today what I want to talk about is how I built mine. And we're going to do it together. So we're not going to build the whole template because it would take days and days and days. But what we're going to do is build the bare bones to get it functioning. And then you can go from there. So if you want to learn how this stuff works and why I've chosen to build it the way that I've built it, this stream's going to be a good one for you. Also, this stream is sponsored by DistroKid. We love DistroKid. They are my favorite distributor that I've used, or that I know about even. I have heard of one other one, but I already love DistroKid. It's been so easy. So yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. If you don't know what DistroKid is, I'm going to tell you all about it a little bit later in the stream. Another thing, I don't know if you saw this or if you follow, but I have this Modbang hat. The Modbang hat, I own a company called Modbang, and it's a electronic music performance type company. And I put on a live show under Modbang, and we released an album under Modbang Records. And I have patch cables that I sell under Modbang. I've had for years. Built the company while I was in college during a Logic class where I was learning how to use Logic Pro and getting certified for Logic Pro, which I got certified. I literally have no idea how I did that or even remember how to use that DAW at all because I'm really just a Bitwig user. But yesterday, I released these. If you can see them, go into focus. Look at those. They're gorgeous. So these are ultra slim, fully transparent right angle patch cables, all the way down to 3.5 inches, which is really tiny, really good for self-patching. I call them self-patch cables. And then I have longer ones, and plus I have the straight plugs that are also ultra thin. So I just released these. They're beautiful. Check out the photography I did. I'm becoming a photographer. I don't know how, but I am, because those photos turned out just chef's kiss. Anyhow, I am doing a discount specifically for my subscribers here on YouTube. So the code is EZBOT23 to get 10% off these cables at modbang.com. I can even write that in here. So 10%. There you go. 10% off with code EZBOT23. Pretty cool. Check them out. They really are great. They're super soft. Okay. Anyhow, that's my commercial for the day. Actually, we'll do another one with DistroKid a little bit later as I tell you about it. Because DistroKid is just sponsors these streams. I'm incredibly grateful for that. So, for those of you who don't even know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these performance templates, let me tell you about, let me talk to you about it for a second. All right, so here it is. We have the Octatrack right here. And then below the Octatrack, I have 3 other pieces of Elektron gear. And to the right, we have a TB303, which I'm, or 03, TB03, because this is a Roland Boutique. And I am contemplating picking up the RE303 black version, of course, to match my Elektron gear. Having it built here locally by a cat named Hauser, or Alex, this is his actual name. He built some stuff, so I was thinking about inquiring to having him build one for me. They are expensive. They're at least $1,000+ to have built. They are true 303s with MIDI as well, and a metal enclosure. So I'm very interested in it. I really love the sound of the 303. I don't ever not want it in my music. It's really fun for live music. And I don't know, it's just good. It's a great filter sound. So this is the setup I'm going to move this over so you can see these cables, because we're going to have to talk about routing and all that and why we route things certain ways. It's all lit up underneath here because I have a light under here that makes it look all pretty. And I really do. I like it, so I'm gonna keep it there. But we'll go back to that. This is sitting on one of my risers, which you can find in the Modbang shop too if you're interested in a setup that looks similar. Okay, so right now we have my template running, my most recent template, which I haven't done an update in just a little bit because it hasn't needed one, but I'm going to do another one that adds some control with the Chic MIDI controller, and that'll be coming out really soon, as well as an 8-bar version of the template. Not 8-bar recordings, but 8-bar effects. Effects that take 8 bars to conclude, because the effects are automated, which is something that we'll have to talk about, but we're not going to go over building that stuff in this video. I actually had a video that I released called how to make epic buildups on the Octatrack. If you watch that video, you'll learn so much about the Octatrack and so much about how to create cool automated effects on the Octatrack. Yeah, I'm surprised more people haven't taken part in checking that video out, because it's just like, it's a gem. It really is a gem of so many different ideas that I put in that video. And it's a long video too, of just dumping all the performance technique ideas I could into a couple different effects. But I'm going to do another one of those videos going a little bit harder on some other ideas. So the way the templates work, there's 4 different parts, right? You have 4 parts on the Octatrack. To make the most use out of that, I use those parts as effect scenes. So what I really want is 16 effects per part. This is really important. This is an important part about using the template and building the template. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to set up the tracks on the Octatrack and how we're going to do the routing, and just like we're literally going to build it from scratch. And I'll probably release like a more edited version of this live stream because this is going to take a little while, and I would love to condense it down so that there's a version that people can breeze through and get to the meat and potatoes quick. Because here I really want to give people the option to communicate with me on, ask questions. Why are you doing it this way? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I would like to be able to have a conversation with you here. So expect to see something more trimmed down, more concise later from this exact stream. All right. So just very quickly, I'm going to go over just some of the sounds that you can make with the template. So I have like, let me go to the newest song that we did. Here's some like deep housey techno. There's just a million effects we can do now. They're all really great for transitioning from part to part in a song. Like here's a build-up. This is stuff that you can build in a template yourself. Okay, so that was like 3 of 64 different effects that are in these templates. You could do the same thing. You can build all these effects from scratch. They take a long time, so you may not want to, but just understanding how something works makes you better at it anyway. I was actually having this conversation with my partner. My niece graduated from high school, and we were at a little graduation party. We were talking about biology on our way home, and my dad was asking some questions about some biology stuff. My partner, my fiance, has a master's in nursing and a degree in safety engineering too. So just knows a lot about safety and health, but knows a lot about the body. And my dad just doesn't know anything about it, really, apparently. That's kind of where the conversation went. We're just talking about how different people learn things and how they understand things, and how some folks, like me, for me to like learn like a programming language on a computer, I have to learn how a computer works first. Like not just how I don't want to learn the language and be like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand how to use this language. But for me, I need to know how the computer functioned in the first place. How are the zero, like, what is the, what's the lower level language? All that kind of stuff. How do how does the network work in it? How does the electronics in the computer work? All that kind of stuff is really fundamental to me, understanding how things work in the first place. So like, I like to know things on a very, very deep level, because I'll keep asking the same questions over and over again and not knowing like where the walls are. What am I confined to? That's how I wanted to learn the Octatrack. So when I learn Elektron, when I learn modular, when I learn a DAW, I like to learn like the nooks and crannies of every little piece, because that's how, I don't know, that's just how I navigate things. And I think that's how a lot of us work. And so I thought it would be good for us to talk about how this template idea and how using the Octatrack as like a performance mixer works on a very deep level. So I know people are picking up the template. Maybe they've never owned an Octatrack. I get these emails all the time. Hey, I bought the Octatrack. Never used one before. Loaded your template. Having a great time. They're not learning the Octatrack. They're learning my template, but they don't know the Octatrack at all. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They're having a great time. They're making music. That's the whole idea. Enabling people to make music. I'm all for that. But I think you're going to get even more out of these machines if we learn the really low level stuff and really understand how things function. Where do the triggers go? Why do we put the track level 127? Why are we parameter locking the volume at 0? Why do we turn it down over here? How long can I record for? What's a dynamic recorder? What's a conditional trig? Like, why do you use this trig? What's a one-shot trig? What's a recorder trig? What's a slide trig? Where is shuffle? I don't know. What is shuffle? What are all of these things? All this stuff I find to be so important to like really using something to its full potential. I hope I'm not being too rambly here. The point I'm coming across is it's not like an RTFM message, even though I do kind of feel that way a little bit. Like, read the manual, it's going to be really helpful. But it's not about reading the manual. It's about learning the machine. You don't need to read the manual to learn the machine. You can learn it from YouTube. It's just fine. But if we learn the fundamentals of the machine, you're going to be able to do alterations to stuff, and you're going to be able to come up with new ideas instead of looking to the internet for those ideas, which is not a problem. But maybe you'll have some that you came up with on your own because you'll finally understand the fundamentals of the machine. So that's why we're going to build this template. And while we're building it, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And if you have feedback and you think what I'm doing is whack, or you're like, why don't you do it this way? This doesn't make sense. Let's have a conversation about it right here on stream. I'll put you on the spot, which is perfect. So let's say what's up. What's going on, John? Dallas House Music? Help. The Octatrack is an acquired taste. I sold mine and won't buy another one. I use and love the MPC Live 2, different strokes. Absolutely. I feel you on that. Kind of. I mean, a little bit. I don't really like the MPC workflow, so I don't vibe on that, but I understand where you're coming from. Okay. So hopefully you've enlarged your screen. I kind of want to show these other machines, but I guess we could zoom in further so you can really see the Octatrack. Okay, this is the closest we're going to go. So here we are, the Octatrack. We're going to load a brand new project, change, create an empty project. I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm not going to save this because I already have the template. I'm doing this for you. I'm going to show you how it's done. All right, look at this. How long it takes. This thing is old. Okay. So by default, the Octatrack loads with, forgiveth me. By default, the Octatrack loads with 8 static tracks. Static tracks play back samples on your Octatrack. They just read samples right off the compact flash card. Another ancient relic of the past from cameras, really, is the compact flash card. Very expensive thing, the compact flash card, although I am quite grateful for it because the read and write speed on mine is pretty good, and it's got like 64 gigs of space, so that's cool. Static tracks, they can play sounds directly off that card, and you can save sounds to that card. the difference between a static track and a flex machines. Flex stands for flexible. The flexible tracks, the flex machines, can also read from the card, but they can also read from recording buffers instantaneously. We're going to use 2 flex tracks and no static tracks in this template that I'm going to show you. But by default, it loads up with all of these static tracks. And because we're using this as a performance mixer, we don't need to be playing with volumes here. We're going to play with volumes on our external gear. This is just an effects processor. So the first thing that we're going to do is, well, we're going to do a couple things right at first here. But we're going to turn the track level up on every single track here to 127. And now all our tracks are at unity, because this 127 value on your track level, this is an attenuation of your volumes in your Octatrack. This is not a boost. You can't boost past 127, and 108 or whatever the default value in your Octatrack, that's not 0. That's not unity. That's just a little bit below some number they found important to them that was just the bare minimum or something. I don't know. But we want to turn it up to 127 so that none of the volumes are attenuated. From here, we're going to go into our pattern settings. We're going to change the scale mode to per track. There's a lot in this box here that you can do on the Octatrack. We're not going to go into it at all because it's unnecessary for what we're doing. But per track is important because we want to be able to have more control over our tracks. We want the Octatrack to be malleable, as I like to call it, so we can kind of mutate the length of some tracks depending on what kind of song we're going to be running through our template. This template can't be completed 100% until you finish all 4 parts, which is one whole bank of effects. Then you save it, then you bring it into your computer and you do some duplication tasks so that it populates all your banks and patterns on the Octatrack. Then you have a full template. That's how a template really works. What's up, Chet Lee? Okay, so what we want to do with Octatrack is we're bringing audio in. We have it on per track mode. We're going to change this to 64 steps and our master to 64. Okay, so at this point, I'm holding function, turning that, it moves in quantized steps of 16. At this point, we now have our tracks, well, all of our tracks need to be 64, so let's go ahead and make sure that that's the case. So now, all of my tracks are 64 steps. I have music in these machines, so we're going to be able to audition stuff as we go. So this won't be an entirely quiet time. You're welcome, John. Thanks for saying that. Just so you know, it's not going to be just me talking, but it is mostly going to be just me talking. This is very much what it's like to do a one-on-one lesson with me. It looks just like this, and this is the kind of stuff that we end up going over. We learn how to build this kind of stuff from scratch. So we want to bring audio in to our Octatrack, right? You have a mixer, you can turn it up to direct 127, and that will bring audio into your Octatrack. However, that audio is going to go in and then right back out your main outs. So it's not going to get processed by anything in this current setup. What we want is to use a THRU track. So we're going to bring this down to 0. We don't want any direct audio input. You can use these gain settings if you want to bring up the level of a machine. If, say, it can't get loud enough, maybe it's broken or something, and you need to gain it up. Otherwise, you're not going to want to use the gain settings at all either. You're really just going to play, you can use your mains, your main outs, because the way this template will work, you do get access to your mains. It won't screw up any sort of resampling. So just leave your mixer alone. I just wanted to point out that if you're asking how to bring audio in, don't do it this way. What we want to do is load up 2 THRU machines. We're going to go over here and also do that. So now we're going to create 2 separate buses. This is the newest innovation I could come up with for the Octatrack. I don't think I'm ever going to veer off of this. So the way that this template will work is that we're going to have 2 different buses of audio, and we're going to have a chain of effects, and most of them are going to be static. We're not going to remove those effects from the chain. We're going to have like 1 effect on each chain that we can switch out per part. But for the most part, we're going to be using some really basic effects to create complex performance effects for transitioning and making buildups and all sorts of stuff. So we got our THRU machines, and we need to select our inputs. on this side, we're going to do the percussion side, or A and B. It doesn't have to be percussion melody. It could just be 2 buses if you wanted. I like to split both those elements from percussion and melody because it's just helpful for making effects that sound better on drums and better on melodic content. Like say I want something very resonant, I can do some really resonant stuff on drums. It's not going to be really, I don't know, it's not going to sound really gross in the mix. If I do something really resonant on the synthesizer side of things, it can sound really gnarly in a mix. Like it just might not be a great sound because maybe it's already a very resonant sound that's happening over here. Most of your drums aren't going to be like, yes, they're resonant in terms of like some sounds are made using resonance, like making a kick drum from like a highly resonant filter or something, but that's different. It doesn't have as much, how do I say it, frequency content on the drum side. So it's, you know, it's more like pinging a filter as opposed to this just being a constant filter ping. That's just kind of the way my brain works on why I split up these elements. I just wanted to make more dynamic effects. All right, so we have the THRU machine here for bus A, and this is going to be bus AB, bus CD. And we're going to bring the volume up to plus 63. I'm going to go over to this one, and we're going to say input C and D for bus C and D, and I'm going to bring its volume up to plus 63. Then I'm going to place down a playback trigger. This sends a message to say THRU track function, and here we're going to place down a playback trigger, and when I hit play, now we have audio in from these machines. You can hear this little whimpering cry from one of my vocal samples on here. Okay, so we got some sound now. Let me just check on this trim. Okay. So now that we have some THRU machines set up and we have the volume set up the way I like it, the reason why I bring the volume up to plus 63, that might seem like a crazy amount of volume to go up, but if you look in the Octatrack manual, it'll tell you that bringing the volume up on a THRU machine to plus 63 is just bringing back 12 dB of volume that was being taken out from the audio that was being brought into the Octatrack. So it's actually bringing it up to unity. So what's happening is, like, say I plugged a set of headphones into the Digitact right now, and I played a track, I would hear that at a specific volume. Now I plug that into the Octatrack. If I left this at 0, I would hear it 12 decibels quieter than I heard in the Digitact. When I bring this up to plus 63, these two machines are playing at the exact same sound. So what I hear right now in the template or on the Octatrack is going to be the same as what I would hear in the Digitact. That's why we do plus 12 on the THRU machines. So we're going to do that on both machines. They're both up plus 12. Which sounds about right to me. Let's see, let's go to a bank 1, was it bank 5 pattern 1? I don't know. No, okay. Well, we don't have the MIDI set up right now anyway, so it doesn't matter. So, all right, so all we have so far right now is our THRU machines running at unity gain. And now the next part of this is just setting it up in a way that you can use effects on incoming audio. But we do want all these machines to communicate with the Octatrack in the same way. So let's go ahead and set up our MIDI really quick. So let's go function MIDI for the shortcut to get into the MIDI. And we want transport send, clock send, program change send. And then we have to select a channel for our program change to communicate. So it's kind of like a male-female style idea, like we're adapting these two things together. So we send a message for program change, and mine is usually set to 10. And then on these machines, you'll see, like here in the Digatone, if I go down to the MIDI config and I go to my channels, here on my program change in channel, this is the male-female thing I'm talking about. So we have an out and we have an in. And the in over here is also set to 10. So this in for program change, which will move these machines to the same song at the exact same time, as long as their master lengths or program change length is set to the same number as well. They'll all move together so that you don't have to go change pattern here, change pattern here, change pattern here, and wait for those patterns to change, because that's an absolute pain in the ass. Like, I know a lot of people have been trying to perform doing it that way, or do perform doing it that way, and it's strictly because they didn't know that they could do it this way. Because every time I talk to somebody and they're like, they show me a track of theirs and they do it that way, it's always because they didn't know that the way program change worked on these machines. So this is really important that you understand this. You set this channel and this channel, the program change send, program change into the same channel, and then have this clock these machines, or you can have this clock and do it the other way around, because there's the option for the receive channel right here on the Octatrack. And that's how these are going to move through the same pattern. So now I can hit play, and the Octatrack is making these machines play. If I move to pattern bank, bank 3 pattern 1 on here, which we don't want to do because it won't be anything, and we'll lose all the work that we've done, or not lose it, but it won't exist in that bank. It will move this to another song. I mean, I can show you. So we can go bank 3 pattern 1. The reason why we're able to still hear it is because the THRU machines that we activated only deactivate after I double press the stop button. So we can actually listen to lots of different stuff right now. Was it bank 3 pattern 1? But if I double press stop, we can't hear it anymore. So this is the thing. But if I go back to bank 1, pattern 1, we can hear it again. It's playing bank 1, pattern 1 across all of my machines, but it also sent these through machine on messages, which these triggers did. So this is all really important stuff. If you don't have your parts set up correctly when you're doing these through machines, they're not going to work when you move to a new bank. And you do want to move to new banks as opposed to loading new projects, because if you're playing a live show, when you try to load a new project, there's going to be silence. The Octatrack takes a while. As you saw, we were just making a new project. It took a while to load that project. So we don't want to have silence. So it's just best, I think, to keep working in the same project. There's 16 banks on the Octatrack, 8 banks on these machines, 16 patterns per bank. There's plenty of room. You don't need to start a brand new project every time you need a new song. Okay, we have our MIDI settings all set up correct. We're going to stay working on bank 1, pattern 1 for the rest of this tutorial. Anything else I need to do while I'm in here? Let me think. Yeah, before we start really going nuts, we can go ahead and change our flex format. So let's turn this to 24-bit because we are going to be using the recorders. We're going to turn on dynamic recorders. What dynamic recorders does, especially since we're only going to use 2 flex machines, this is really helpful for us. Dynamic recorders, all of your flex machines, you have 8 recording buffers on the Octatrack. They just live here. You can't remove them or anything like that. They're always there. And they have a certain amount of RAM allocated to them. When you use dynamic recorders, this lets you, if one recorder goes beyond its allocated RAM amount, it'll take the RAM from another recorder and use it here. So another one will go down. Since we're only going to be using 2 flex tracks, we're going to have 2 tracks use up all the RAM. So if we wanted to do really long recordings, which we can do if we want, we could do that with dynamic recorders. Technically, we wouldn't need it because our recorders are going to be set up to record 4 bars, and by default, that's going to be plenty for us. But if we had an incredibly low tempo playing and a track took a really long time to get through, maybe we would still need dynamic recorders. We're going to turn it on. For the flex format 24-bit, this is the recording format. So incoming audio is going to be recorded at 4424. Bit depth has to do with your dynamic range. This is how loud a signal can be and it will still have clarity. That's what your bit depth is. And then we have our recorder format here. Set that to 24-bit. And then once I leave this menu, it's going to have this little message pop up and it's going to say, you want to do this? It's going to erase everything in your RAM right now because we're reformatting how the RAM functions. We say yes, it doesn't matter. We don't have any audio in there. So we're good with our memory. We're good with our format. So now our audio coming into the Octatrack is 4424 as opposed to 4416. So better dynamic range. We do have balanced inputs on the Octatrack, so we want to use balanced outputs with our machines. Also, better dynamic range, lower noise floor with balanced cables. Now, we can also go into System and Personalize, Quantize Live Recording. This might be good if you want to. I like to have Disable Stop Arm on here because we are going to be using one-shot recorder trigs to activate our flex recorders. And if you press stop twice, and I don't know about you, this is get the serious cam, but I don't know about you, but every time I stop a song on the Octatrack, not every time, but I often I'm just smashing the stop button. And if I hit that stop button more than once, like say I need to stop the audio because the trail's going on too long, if you double press stop on the Octatrack and all the other Elektron boxes, it will even stop listening to the send effects. So it will completely kill the output. On the Octatrack, by default, if you do that, it'll rearm all of your one-shot triggers. And we're going to be using 2 one-shot triggers for our recording trigs. And this is important. We don't want the recording trigs to be rearmed when we don't tell them to rearm. We want to be in full control of arming the recording triggers because they're essential for transitioning from part to part and for a lot of effects like live reverse, pitch risers, doing just 4-bar loops of our audio for transitions, modulations where we transpose a whole track down like a fifth or an octave or something. All that stuff we need to have control over. We don't want the Octatrack randomly grabbing that, erasing what we have in our buffer. Like say we want to record stems of audio. What if we just erased what we had and we don't know what we did? We played something special. It's gone now. So this is why I don't like this. I always turn it off. Whoops. I keep doing that. Don't mean to do that. All right, so it's disable stop arm. We have that turned off. I like my default record mode to be 1, 2. This is a button press to turn it on, a button press to turn it off. 1, 2 refers to these buttons over here. And I also like to have my samples saved to the project directory. So this might not be as useful with the performance template, to be honest, but this is really useful if you're just working on the Octatrack. I have another Octatrack, my battery-powered Octatrack over here. This one I actually use to make music in my Octatrack, as opposed to this one, which acts as a performance mixer on this YouTube channel and for my live shows. So this is really helpful. When it saves samples, it's going to save those samples into your project directory itself. So your samples won't go into that audio folder, which has no organization other than what you create using either the card tools function on here, which is an old and outdated way to navigate any sort of CF card. It's not fun or easy. It's much faster to plug it into your computer and do all your organization with a mouse and keyboard. But even better is you can just have the audio get saved directly to your project and not have that saved into that audio folder. And then if you want to move it to the audio folder, go ahead and do that. But otherwise, do you really need to have that audio in an audio folder? Are you going to be recalling your random tidbits of audio that you recorded for a song into another song? I mean, maybe you are, but the likelihood of that happening is low. So I think it's better to have it saved into the project directory. There's also a way to do it where you can have it saved to the audio folder, which is how it does by default. And then you can do, a grab that will go and grab all the files and it will move them into your project directory. It'll say save to collect samples and save to this project. It's a function in your menu. That's the same as what I'm talking about. This just takes that step out. So you can just leave it like this. I like to use record quick mode. This means that it's one button press to use these triggers up here to do your recordings. For what we're doing today with making our performance template from scratch, we're not going to be using the button triggers. We are going to use one-shot recorder trigs. When I'm working on the Octatrack, typically for like a production standpoint, not for a performance mixer standpoint, I do use these buttons and not recorder trigs. I think that this is a much faster and makes more sense to me to work with than recorder one-shot trigs. In terms of sampling, it's actually more complex and confusing to use one-shot record trigs if you're working in a production standpoint. This will actually work for you much easier. What's going on? Michael Squia, it's muscle memory for me too. What's up, dude? Michael's my boy. Son Woo, how's it going? Good to see you. Son Woo. The amount of work you put into this is insane. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Human Program. Hi all, saw today that Bitwig 5 has project level modulators, which makes an Octatrack style setup with the performance scenes a possibility in the box. Seems super powerful, but no clack, clack, clack. Doug, what's up, Doug? I agree. That does sound really cool. And you can build templates like this in Bitwig, and you could actually already do it before they did the Bitwig 5 release. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I love Bitwig. I can't get away from Bitwig. I'm using the Push 3, and I just I'm recording into Bitwig right now as we speak. So I'm recording the stream. Every time I try and record into live, I accidentally, if I click on another track, it undoes the record message. And I'm so used to that not being a thing in Bitwig. If I press the, toggle the recorder for a track before I hit the, the global record, it doesn't untoggle record on that track. And I've accidentally not recorded either my voice or the Octatrack several times and had to use this summed audio recording that I have from the stream. So that's like just a single frustration I've had in Ableton. Besides the push threes stuff that it's frustrated with me with about whatever. That's such a detour, but I couldn't help but mention that when you talk about Bitwig. I just love Bitwig so much. I do like Ableton. Don't get me wrong. Okay. We're not going to talk about Ableton, Push 3, or Bitwig for the rest of the stream. We're not. We're going to do this. All right. So we took a detour talking about all these internal settings. They're not the most important part of what we're doing. All of that stuff didn't need to happen. These are just things that I choose to do from my experience working in the Octatrack and from making all these performance templates. I've kind of like basically turned it into a job, so to speak, because I've done so many of them now. What we want to do next is we want to start putting in neighbor tracks. So the big innovation, I think, I'm so thirsty. And it's coconut. It's so good. Sponsor me. Sponsor me. LaCroix. Sponsor me for coconut, specifically. Only coconut, though. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to have a through track bleed into a neighbor track. And like I was saying, one of the innovations, so to speak, of this newest ultimate effects template is that it goes through machine, neighbor track, through machine, neighbor track, flex machine, flex machine. These two flex machines are recording individually this side of the bus, and this flex machine recording individually this side of the bus. And then we have a scene, 16 will be our scene, and it will play back both these recordings at the same time. So a stack of left and right on top of each other in unity gain. Call it the all scene. This will be the recording of everything. We'll have another scene here. This will play back a recording of this side and this side live. And we'll have another scene here, which will do the inverse, playing this side recording and this side live. There's lots of reasons for this. You can record movements in here, have them play over, start setting up new stuff from another pattern, and then crossfade back over to the live version of this, and vice versa on here, and vice versa with the whole entire mix. That's the idea behind these looping buffers. They allow you to move from pattern to pattern, track to track, element to element within a song without your audience knowing that you're queuing up a bunch of different ideas or samples or effects. So there's all sorts of great reasons for it. The innovation here is going through neighbor. And because we're doing that, and the way we're going to set up these effects on these buses, and this is how we're going to think about this, is two different stereo buses, is that we're going to have a compressor. The compressor is going to go into a beat repeat or a freeze delay, and that's going to go into a neighbor track. On this neighbor track is going to be a filter. This is going to be our master bus filter for this side. We're going to do the same thing on both sides. Then after that, it's going to go into a delay. This is going to be our master delay. This is not going to be a beat repeat. So the delay that we're going to have on track 1 isn't going to act as a delay. It's going to act as a beat repeat explicitly. That's all it's going to do. Then from there, we're going to have an effect that we can change. It's going to be effects 1 on track 3. This can change out for whatever effect we want. That's going to lead into a reverb. Reverb always sounds best after your delay. We don't want to delay a reverb tail. That sounds really messy, and it would be really messy. It can sound cool, of course, in sound design, but as a general DJ effects, not the best workflow. I got paranoid I was going to knock over that drink. After that is the flex machine, which these effects don't really matter. This is going to be completely up to you. So that's what we're going to build out really quick. So for effects 1, we're going to start with a compressor. And let's talk about this right here. So you look at your compressor, you're like, oh my God, what is a compressor? I'm going to lose my mind. Compressors. You know, compressors are brain melters for a lot of people, especially folks coming from like playing guitar that are getting into electronic music. They're like, maybe they didn't learn about compression. They've just been playing guitar. Maybe they're vocalists, and maybe a vocalist probably knows compression better than a guitar player. But knowing how to set up a compressor for a basic compression mix can be helpful. However, that's not like the main idea of this stream today. I'm going to just assume that you understand a bit about compression. But I do want to tell you about what this RMS stands for. So when you load up a compressor on the Octatrack, you'll see that there's this RMS dial. I forget what the acronym stands for, which is a real bummer, but I'll tell you what it does. So when you turn the RMS up, this is actually a mix between, it's an algorithm. It controls the algorithm for the compressor. When you turn RMS up to its like max value, this becomes a master bus compressor. When you have it down here at the bottom, this is where it's better for compressing really high dynamics. So compressing, say, a drum bus. We don't really want to turn RMS up very much for compressing a drum bus because we want to have use our compressor in more of a stylized way where it's going to emphasize our drums. If we turn the RMS up all the way, it's going to more like look for a general waveform and compress that general waveform rather than being so detailed on its compression when the RMS is turned down. So this is what RMS means in the compressor world. For our compressor, for this template, we're going to use the following settings. We want 50, 80, 48, 33. Okay, so we want our attack at 50. It took me a long time to get these settings to a place where I like them. We want our release at 80. I'm looking at something right now. That's why I keep going back and forth because I don't have them memorized. It's like, it's too much, man. It's too much to memorize. And then we want our ratio at 33. Again, these are just EZBOT compressor settings. These aren't, this isn't the rule of thumb for everybody, but this compressor I think sounds good. We want our gain at 6 or 7. I have mine at 7. 6 I think sounds really good too. And then we can have our mix at 127. So now what we want to do is we actually want to hold effects 1 and hit copy to copy the page on effects 1. We're going to go over to track 5 and let's turn it into a compressor. I could just paste it right in there, but the Octatrack is known for having this bug where if you paste effects over into another effects slot where it doesn't have that effects living into it, it might paste over some like unwanted settings that are hidden. So it's buggy. Like you can paste, you can actually copy a reverb from effects 2 and paste a reverb onto effects 1. Or you could paste a delay from effects 2 onto effects 1 and put a reverb here and it will work. You can delay into a reverb on one track on the Octatrack. It will highly likely do something bad to your Octatrack. Sometimes it'll work, but most of the times it will do something bad. I don't recommend you do it. If you're up to trying it, go for it. It does work, but it's also like, it's a real gamble that it's not going to just stay that way for all of your like songs until you do a reset on your Octatrack. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just grab this compressor again and go to the scene and we're going to paste it. There we go. So now we have matching bus compressors. But for bus compressor number 2, for the side that's doing the melody, which is going to have like way less dynamic waveforms than drums, because drums are like pop, 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 right? Waveforms real jagged on if you look at a drum waveform, like the bus of a bunch of drum tracks, it's a bunch of punches and clicks and clacks. Super, high dynamic range. Synthesizer, huge waveforms, just really long bricks of smooth waves. So let's go ahead and turn the RMS up on that side so we get more of a nice mix. So we don't need to turn it up all the way, but we can turn it up a bit. Something you can revisit later. So there we go. We got 2 compressors. I don't want to use this song as where we're gonna mess with stuff. Let me see. Bank 3. 5, bank 3, 5. Turn that vocal sample off. Sounds weird. That song sounds weird at this tempo. So we could adjust the tempo. This is for our template. So we really want our tempo to be, well, it doesn't matter because we're going to copy it everywhere, but. Bank 3, 5, 4. Okay, so this is what we'll use for going forward. Right now we have our whole mix compressed. This side is compressing it with a bus mix. This side is compressing it with more of a drum compressor mix. So both great. Now we're going to go to effects 2 We're going to go into effects 2. We're going to turn this into a beat repeat. While we're talking about turning our Octatrack's effects into a beat repeat, why don't we go ahead and drop down to these keyboards. If you hold function and hit the down button, you can load up different keyboards on your Octatrack. At the very bottom here is delay control. These are all the delays on the Octatrack. This is delay 1. So this is the delay we're going to hit when we want to beat repeat this side of the Octatrack. So pressing this button, these are the different lengths in the buffer. I don't know if you can see this, but that's changing these right here, these dials. That's delay time. So let's go back into our delay. You can turn ping pong on if you want. This will make each delay go to a separate side on the Octatrack. I'm going to turn tape off. Tape does not sound good with the beat repeat because it repitches it. And when it repitches it, we're going to lose the pitch of our music. So we don't want a repitched sound for our music. So I have tape off here, and we're going to turn lock on, and that's it. That's all we need to do here. So, but we're going to go, you can actually hold this and hit copy, and we can copy that page and go over here and paste that here. So now we have that pasted onto our other bus. So now both these delays are set up in the same way. The next part we want to do is turn up feedback to 127. This means that as those beat repeats are happening, they don't ever fade out. They just happen as long as we are doing this. And then we have to turn our send up above 0. I like to turn the send up to 127. The reason for this, send only needs to be above 0 in order for the freeze delays to function. At 127, this means the crossfader is all the way over here. So this is 0, this is 1. That means that just right here, that would engage the freeze delay if we were using it with a scene. We are going to use it with a scene, so we don't want it to be right there. We want it to be all the way over here as it hits the very end. I'm also going to turn off side A for the scenes because we're going to be using the effects as a dry wet mix. Because we want most of the time we want our music to be completely dry and unaffected by the effects. We just want to choose when they're happening, slowly fade to them, or quickly trigger them. Or use the freeze delays, which will be 9 and 13, or tracks 1 and 5. So we have our send at 127, we have our feedback at 127. We can leave the time at 48. But honestly, I am going to probably turn the time up to 128 because that's typically how the effect that we're going to use, that will repeat 8 steps of our sequence or a half of a bar. And I use that all the time for effects because that's the maximum amount I can repeat. Repeating small amounts isn't as effective as repeating large amounts in terms of making effects. We can always go down in size very easily, but going up in size doesn't work with beat repeats. You can't refreeze a segment at a longer time because that time doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It's already been frozen at a smaller time. But you can refreeze longer segments of audio at a lower time because that audio still existed in a larger bit of time. This is like almost like some sort of Einstein time space stuff that we're talking about, but if you think about it, it makes sense. So these are the settings we want. Everything's at 127. It's pretty easy to remember except for the time, but it's just the max values. We can hold this, hit copy, go to this one, hit paste. Here's what we've done so far. We've created a beat repeat that'll repeat at half notes. So I can go like this. Here's our beat repeats. I know, that was a really long presentation of the freeze delays, but you can just see how much fun they are to play with. So now we have a compressor that's compressing our signal at its base coming in. All the audio coming in is getting compressed, and it's running into this beat repeat. There's so many different effects that we can make already, just right where we're at with our default settings. We could make the Daft Punk effect, we can make that Circo riser, we could make the Easy Drummer effect, which is a drum fill, all of that without having to add any more stuff to what we have currently. There's just a ton. There's a ton that we can do. So now that we have these settings all set up, we got to move on to start adding some effects. So here we go. We're going to add a neighbor track. which is going to give us 2 more insert effects. And we're actually going to leave the neighbor track with its default settings, a filter and a delay. I like to turn the delay up to 80 for a default feedback. 80 is like a decent sounding feedback, so it doesn't go for too long. And we can go ahead and just copy that and paste it onto the next track over so that they're identical. And we're going to leave the filter the way it is. There's not too much to talk about at this segment in time because those are the defaults that load up on the Octatrack. They're always load with a filter and a delay. And all we did was just adjust the feedback of the delay. But already we could let's make an effect really quick before we move on to building the rest of the template, just so you can get an idea of how powerful this is already at this point in time. So what we can do is go over here. We'll go to scene 4. I'm going to go to track 1. I'm going to lock the send at 0 for bus AB. And we're going to leave the right side, C and D, running completely clean. Then we're going to go over to this side here on track 2, which is our neighbor track that has a filter. And we're going to filter this down with our scene, or bring it way down so it's like barely audible. So right now it's repeating. We're gonna go onto this side and we're gonna use this side with a high pass filter. And then we're gonna go to the next effect over on effects 2 on the neighbor track here. We're gonna give it some send for our delay. This side's being beat repeated. So like I can add some hi-hats. You can't hear these hi-hats or this snare drum right now, but check this out. Already fully functional. But we can make it even more interesting. So we can go over to this side, go into well, let's also add some delay to this side too. So let's go ahead and go to effects 2 over here and give it some send. We might, since this is going to have a bunch of clunky bass sounds, we might want to lock in some high pass filtering on this delay. So it's more of a build-up. Cool, sounds good already. Let's go into our LFO. LFO 1, we're going to set to our filter width. We're going to set our waveform to a ramp wave, multiplier 1x, trig. So what we want to do is put down a playback trigger on our neighbor track, just so it triggers this LFO. We could also put down this green trigger, hold it, and press no, and this becomes a trigless trig. The trigless trig will also re-trigger this LFO and amp LFO and amp envelope generators. So we could leave it like that, but it's just easier to have the red trigger here. There's no sample, so it's not going to play back the sample. Just go ahead and put that on this track as well. All right, so from here, what we want to do is set the speed at 16, and then we're going to leave this menu. We're still on this scene, and we're going to give it some depth. Let's give it like, I don't know, 60 and just see how this sounds. Okay, so this is going to open up the filter on our frozen buffer. Here it comes. There we go. Boom. We've barely done anything. We already have a performance template that works. We already have a really cool effect for transitioning. And just imagine all the variations you can make with our next neighbor track, which would add reverb and another effects. Plus, we can make recordings of it as well. So this is just the beginning. And this, I'm hoping that this helps you understand how I'm thinking as I'm building these templates, as I'm using the Octatrack, and why I chose to use the Octatrack as opposed to, a DB4 DJ mixer, which I considered buying many times. I still consider picking one up because they are a better mixer. They just don't have the ability to customize these effects. Okay, so now we have a really cool scene. And And there's just a bunch of effects. We could build one more. We could put the Daft Punk effect in here really quick. So here we go, back to our freeze delay. We're gonna bring this one to 0 and this one to 0. Then we're gonna go over to track 2 where our filter's at, and we're gonna use the bass with both filters. Bring this bass way down and give it a good amount of resonance. Let's just hear where this is at. Okay. Okay, here's our Daft Punk effect, which would sound even better if we threw a chorus on this side behind it. But first we need to make this a neighbor track. That would help, right? Go ahead and put that. There we go. Okay, you can hear how the chorus really filled out those. So while this is happening, we could bring another sound in. All right, let's go ahead and add a neighbor track on this side. Okay, so on this side, we have to decide like what kind of effects do we want on our drums. A good one to play with, I think, is the lo-fi effect, because it's really just gives you a bunch of effects, right? We have a distortion, we have a sample rate reduction, we have a bit rate reduction. So sample rate reduction is actually reducing the quality of the sound at a sample rate level. So it's like how many samples per second the audio comes in, so it'll sound really lo-fi. Bitrate is a reduction of the actual dynamic range, so it'll sound really crunchy and distorted. So in fact, too much bitrate reduction will just be muted because there will be no dynamic range left. And then we have amplitude frequency and the actual depth of how much of this amplitude frequency modulation happens. So this is actually like audio rate modulation that's happening here. So this is a multi-effects effect. That's what the lo-fi effect stands for. It's all these different multi-effects, or it is a multi-effect. So it's a really powerful one. You could use it all the time to do a lot of different stuff. So what we could do is actually like copy this Daft Punk scene, paste it here, and then we could give it a bunch of sample rate reduction. And then chorus again, why not? Maybe we'll turn this into a reverb, which is what I intended to do. So I do actually, for the templates that I create, it always goes compressor, beat repeat, filter, delay, effect that I can change on effects 1, reverb, always on effects 2. That's the same on all of my parts all the time, because that chain makes the most sense. A compressed signal, we go a compressed signal into a beat repeat. So right there, we can now modulate that compressed signal that's also been beat repeated. So we can have a beat repeat and then use the crossfader to filter that beat repeat, or to add effects to it with, say, an external MIDI controller, or manually right on the Octatrack. So this signal path makes the most sense. Compress at the base, beat repeat at the base. And then from there, we can apply all the effects that we need. So this is important that we work in that signal flow. At least that's what I think, unless someone has a better idea. And I honestly wouldn't believe you, because I can't understand how there could be a better effects chain than compressing at the base. I don't want to compress all of my effects. That's something I would do outside of the Octatrack. If you want to have a bus compressor that will compress your entire mix, do that externally with an analog compressor or with your analog heat plus effects box if you've managed to get yourself one, which I haven't. But if you had, do it there. Don't do it on a master track on your Octatrack because it's messy and honestly it doesn't do a great job at doing this master bus thing. I think it's better to mix these two effects together or mix these two compressors together. Okay. So we have lots of cool effects going. And we're gonna put a reverb here. I like to have my reverb set on mix, or on send, I'm sorry, instead of mix. The reason why we want it on send instead of mix is that when you have it on mix, if I turn the mix down on a reverb, it treats it more like an insert effect. So when I turn the mix down, it treats it exactly like an insert effect. That's why it's mix versus send. But the tails of the reverb won't die off once I turn off the reverb. Like if I add a bunch of reverb to a signal and I bring the mix down, the reverb will go away. This can be a really cool effect when you're writing music, but it's not a great effect for like live performance. We want reverb trails. Like we want to have something hit the reverb and it have this like nice effect on a live performance. So the send version's good. The pre-delay by default is set at 0, which is strange that they've made so many other choices on the Octatrack, and one of them was to have pre-delay on reverb set at 0. I don't know, we could turn it up to like 8 or something. A low pre-delay is pretty good in my opinion. From here, I like to bring the time on the reverbs like way up. I'll keep them at like 100 because this is something I can change with one of my effects scenes if I want. But by default, I'd rather have a big reverb than a small one. We can leave the shelving gains alone. This is stuff that you're gonna have to go into your reverb and start crafting these things yourself. But you can make this dark reverb on the Octatrack sound pretty similar to the reverb in these newer boxes. They have better reverbs than the Octatrack does, but the Octatrack, you can play with the reverb on a per track level, something you can't do here. I'm talking a lot. I'm talking really fast because I'm trying to give you as much information as I can. We're already at an hour into the stream, and I feel like I've shared a lot of tidbits about the inner workings of the Ultimate Effects template, which is what I'm building right now. We're building out the bare bones of it, and we've built a couple of the effects that are in it. But it's a lot, so I understand. That's why I'm having to drink this LaCroix like every 2 seconds because I'm just grilling my brain right now for all the data I can give you. I really like, this is something that was talked about in my Discord. If you're not in my Discord, there'll be a link to it in the comments section. This will also be a good time for us to talk about DistroKid, which I'll do in just a second. But first I want to talk about this idea. I love the idea of like, I build these templates out on the Octatrack. I sell them on coffee.com/EZBOT, and I have them as part of a reward in my Patreon. This is an incentive to join my Patreon, is to get these templates. Totally makes sense to me. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing this. I think this is it's a cool reward, I think. But I also love the idea of showing people how to do it without having to pay any money to me. So right now I'm giving away all of my, secrets, so to speak, or like these are my ideas that I do with the Octatrack, and I'm sharing them for free live on stream, and I'm going to leave this up here. But I like that idea. I like that you can provide a service, but you also show people how to do it themselves. It's that whole like teach a man to fish, and whatever, how that saying goes. And he's going to go and catch fish versus teach a man how to, make a couple of bucks so he can go buy a fish. How about you just teach him to fish? That's the same idea. I butchered that saying. I'm sorry. I forget how to say it so eloquently, but that's the idea here. I like being a person who does stuff like that. And I would like to stay a person who does that, who provides a service, but also lets people provide that service to themselves. Something I learned in I don't know, it's kind of I consider it like a spiritual practice, honestly. No, we're not going to talk about spirituality on stream right now, but I do consider that kind of a spiritual practice. No, you nailed it. Thanks, Ben X. Appreciate that. Okay, so right now I'm teaching people how to fish. Let's keep fishing, shall we? Fishing for bangers. We're fishing for bangers at live shows. All right, let's bring up. We got the time set up on both these. I like kind of a darker reverb. It's called dark reverb on its own, but I'd darken it down a little bit. Let's bring it down. Bring this one down here. We don't want too much low end on the bass side because the bass is going to run through here, and some of the effects are going to drench our bass line and reverb. So let's have our reverb be a little bit on the higher end. So let's high pass it a bit, and maybe use our shelving gain. So now we could actually take this effect that's using all these delays. We could actually add some reverb to it. Whoops. That sounds pretty nice. I did high pass it quite a bit because the drums were really bassy and thumpy. Maybe we won't have any reverb on this side. Here we go. We went right into a breakdown. This is why this is dope as a performance mixer. Check it out. Like we can just improvise on the same pattern over and over and over again. Only 2 effects still. So these are really basic so far that we only have 2 effects, but we're able to play around so much already. We're able to navigate because it's locking our audio down and repeating it for us so that our audience doesn't know what we're doing here. So we can just constantly compromise or compromise. We can't compromise too. We can constantly improvise on our arrangement. It doesn't have to be elektron. Remove all of these. Put whatever you want. Put your modular system here. I just built a new modular system. I believe I'm picking up a ROSM assimilator soon. I'm really excited about that because I've wanted a ROSM assimilator for a long time, and I think it's going to go well in my modular system. So I'll be doing much more modular stuff on the channel once I get that module in, because I feel like that's what's been missing in my modular system has been a sampler that I like and want to use. So I think the assimilator is going to solve that issue for me. So I'll be using the Octatrack with my modular a lot more, and we're going to talk about sound design with modular and some other stuff that we don't chat about too much on my channel. But I do chat about all the time at work because I work at a synthesizer store where we teach Eurorack and all sorts of stuff all day long. So I have a lot to share on Eurorack and synthesizers that I don't share on this channel, but we're gonna change that. But let's keep building here. So we need some more essential stuff, and we haven't even put in our flex tracks yet. We haven't talked about recording. I think by the time that we get to a place where we've talked about how we set up the recorders and do 4-bar recording loops, that's going to be about the end of the stream. So, but wait a second. Wait, I can't forget. Let's talk about our sponsor for a second. Our lovely sponsor pays for these streams which allows me to talk to you about the Octatrack regularly. And I know that you guys love the Octatrack. You love Elektron like I love Elektron. You love live electronic music. You love performance and playing with step sequencers just like I do. So let's take a moment to appreciate our streamlords, aka DistroKid. So what I want to talk about real quick is, what is DistroKid? DistroKid is a distributor that I use. We released a compilation just recently from my Discord where a bunch of artists, I believe 30 artists altogether, all submitted music to me, and I had it mastered, and everybody paid $15, and that's it, to the mastering service. And then I went in and released that music on an album and set up splits to everybody so that if somebody buys our record, they're going to get the amount that they're owed for their music. And every artist is going to get paid that way, which is fun. And I don't expect that everyone's going to get a bunch of money or something. That's up to us to make good music and market it ourselves for that to make some money. But DistroKid is going to be the one enabling us to do that. They're going to send our music. They're going to put graphics on our albums. They're going to send it to Spotify, over to iTunes. They're going to send it over to Deezer and Tidal and collect all the money and royalties that we're owed. They're going to let people buy our album. They're going to allow us to add lyrics and create promo cards for our music and send links and give us referral money if we get other people to join it, or convince another artist to join a distribution company. When all these artists are sitting here making bangers at home and not sharing them with anybody. Come on, guys, share them. So this is the DistroKid website right here. It's only $20, $23 for the entire year of having DistroKid. And it does so much. You can sign up with your Google account, Apple, or Facebook. It's a piece of cake. It gets all your music, $23. Get your music in stores 10 to 20 times faster than any other distributor. And I believe that this is a fact. Like, I've been working with DistroKid since I heard about it. My neighbor works for DistroKid. They're local here in Washington. I know not all of us watching the stream right now are here in Washington, but DistroKid's not, I'm not saying they're a Washington company, but some of their employees are, and I live next to them. And they're all really nice folks. But they offer all these cool services. They'll even master your tracks, put you on playlists. This is really important stuff. So, like, there's some math to it here. If we want, like, how much money can we make making bangers? What is it? So, like, DistroKid says in their info section, I believe, if we got a track distributed through DistroKid, goes out to all these other platforms, and if it got 1 million plays, would be amazing. If you got 1 million plays on any of your tracks, you're freaking awesome. So my hat's off to you. However, I've not had 1 million plays on any tracks or even on a YouTube video. But if I did, if I had 1 million plays on a video on YouTube, it wouldn't actually pay me as much as it would pay me to have 1 million plays on a video, on a song through DistroKid. Apparently, 1 million plays through DistroKid's distribution could potentially gross like up to like $30,000+, I believe, for 1 million plays. That's what I was reading. It sounds like a lot more, like it sounds like a lot of money for streams. Doesn't seem to add up to me, but that's what I was reading. I would love for anyone to tell me otherwise about that, but apparently, potentially, I could be making more money just making some bangers and uploading them through a distribution service than I could running a YouTube channel. But I really do enjoy using the YouTube channel. So anyway, yeah, DistroKid is awesome. If you don't have a distribution service, you should just sign up for DistroKid, $23. There's a link for it in the description of this video. It gives you 7% off, so it's a little bit cheaper. Not by much, but a little bit cheaper. The service is already so cheap, why not do it anyway? Get your music out there. Just do it. Just release the music. They'll master it for you. Like, they'll do the promo card. You just upload it, put a name on it, let them master it, use their little share promo cards. It looks professional. It looks more professional than it will look if you do it, unless you know how to use Photoshop. and have Midjourney or something and know how to use Photoshop. You need both those services to match what they're going to do for you for free. So I think it's awesome. Go for it. Sonwoo says, do you have any recommendation for tutorials to create transition punch-in effects like these in Ableton? I don't know. So I was talking with a buddy of mine about building this template for Ableton so that we can load it into push threes, so that we could use the push three as an alternative to an Octatrack, because the effects in the push three are, you know, they're light years ahead of this or any of these, but they're light years ahead of any groove box you can buy. The push three's effects are better than every box out right now. MPC Live 2 gets smoked by it. Absolutely smoked by it. The Akai Force, smoked. Any Polyend machine, smoked. Any Elektron box, smoked. There's nothing. That's because it's Ableton. It's a laptop. Nothing competes with that. That's just the way it is. You know what I mean? So I was thinking if we could put the template in that box, we'd still get the tactile feedback of knobs and twiddly diddlies without having to go to and actually crack open a MacBook Pro or some sort of gaming laptop that we're dragging around with us, which has like no battery life, right? At least the MacBook's got a good battery life. But anyway, long story short, Sonwoo, no, I don't. But I have watched a lot of Ableton tutorials on how to build effects in general, and a lot of that has brought me to learning, you know, how to build some of these effects in the Octatrack. But nothing I could mention because I can't remember any of it. It's just random tidbits here and there. Okay, so now we have like most of the buses set up in our effects chain. We have, let's just go over it really quick. Track 1, through track. Audio comes in, goes into a compressor, goes into a beat repeat, goes into a filter, goes into a delay, goes into a lo-fi effect on this side, goes into a reverb. The last piece of the puzzle is going to be a flex track for recording this side. On this side, it's the same idea, except for on this one, effects 1 is going into a chorus. So the last piece of the puzzle for us, well, is to put our flex tracks in and learn how to record these and keep everything at unity gain and transition back and forth between recordings and live audio. The coffee link still doesn't work? That's because it auto-populates. You're looking at the lower link, I think. The top link works. Pretty sure. I don't know. I don't know if it's something I can fix right now during the stream. Just go to coffee.com/EZBOT. Oh. This one leads to coffee, but not your product. Well, I need to fix that. It's probably really screwing me over. Okay. I think maybe I fixed it. All right, let's move on. We got more road to tackle, and I don't like going past 2 hours, and we're already at 1 hour and 20. So let's get to the flex tracks. This is a part where it gets a little tough, right? This is the part that I think most people get lost in the Octatrack, is how to do quantized recordings. It is tough. Like, it was something that took me a long time to get perfect quantized recordings at unity gain consistently, like to know what settings were the right settings and all of that. And it took me a while to figure it out. But we did. We did figure it out, and I'm going to show you. So let's go to track 4, and let's turn it into a flex track, and let's do it with track 8. So there's no master track in this template. We're not using master tracks anymore. I probably won't make any more templates with master tracks unless they are for a specific idea. But I think in terms of being a performance effects box, master tracks are actually, they get in the way, if anything. So I don't want to use them anymore. Hurry up. I know. Thanks, Dana. All right, so let's talk about this really quick. We have this menu. We're looking at a flex track. Flex tracks, they can play back audio from the recording buffer instantaneously. So we want loop on. We don't need it to be set to auto. Auto will look to other places in the Octatrack where you had loop turned on and use that to decide if loop is turned on. Same with time stretch auto. It'll look to other places in the Octatrack to use time stretch. We're gonna leave time stretch alone right now because some effects you might want time stretch for, and some stuff you don't want time stretch for. The thing about time stretch that can be useful is if you're transitioning to a track that's playing at a different tempo, it will time stretch. You're playing back a looped recording. It'll time stretch your looped recording to match that tempo. It'll be something that the audience definitely notices. The song all of a sudden just went and starts stretching, but it sounds more like an effect than it does something wonky and weird, because it will still play that loop back at the right time. So that's like, it's just something to keep in mind. If you don't use it, it'll play back the loop just relative to the length of your tempo, or the length of your loop will play relative to the tempo. So if the tempo went down, it'll play that whole loop and a little bit of it. If the tempo went up, it'll play not that entire loop. So that would sound bad, right? So time stretch might be a good thing to use. It all depends on how you're going to work. If every one of your tracks is going to be at the same tempo in your performances, which a lot of people do, they'll be like, I'm playing a 140 BPM set, then this won't matter at all, because you'll just be moving from 140 BPM to 140 BPM. That's the best way to use the template, is using all your tracks at the same tempo. I never have all my tracks at the same tempo. Mine are always going from like 90 to 150 to 130. I'm not using it in the best way, but that's just the way I like to make music. So, but if you're playing like a techno set, having all your tracks be at the same tempo, or having all your tracks be at the same tempo is gonna be the best way to use the recording buffers for transitioning into a new song. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. But it's just for this part does the tempo matter. Then we have this TSNS. This is the time stretch algorithm adjustment, only for the beat time stretch algorithm, which doesn't matter. But if we were using time stretch on this bus, we would want to use the beat time stretch and bring the rate to time stretch and maybe turn that up if we wanted. You could adjust it to taste to have a beat time stretch because this is playing the beat. We can turn it off for now. We don't want to use slice because we're not going to be slicing our audio. It's going to be just for playing back recordings. So this is going to be the same on both sides. Loop on, rate to time stretch. Just leave it on auto and you're good to go. Okay, so now we need to assign these flex tracks to a recording buffer. I'm going to put this one on buffer 4, which is where this track is. So it's just going to look at the buffer that it's on, which just makes it convenient, easy for us to control. Hit yes, okay. Done here. We're gonna go here and have this one look at recording buffer 8. Also, the recording buffer that's already assigned to that track, or not assigned to it, but lives on that track. So at this point, we can go into the audio editors now, and we could record just by hitting this button, And we have just this side. Isn't that kind of cool? Like, we heard the whole mix, but that's unity gain of just this machine. And then on this side, we have the exact same thing. But we're going to set up a recording trig. It's going to trigger both these tracks to record at the same time. So what we do is we go function rec1. This is our record setup. What we want to do is we can turn off A, B, C, and D. We're going to record track 3, which is the end of our effects chain. And on this side, we're going to record track 7, which is the end of our effects chain on bus CD. That's why it's bus AB, bus CD, and these are going to be the recorders at the end of the chain. So we want to direct source 3 to track 7 on this side. Here's that loop on I was talking about. If it was set to auto and this was set to on, it would loop because auto would detect that we had loop turned on here. We're going to set our record length to 64. I'm going to re-release a video on how to record quantized 8-bar loops, 16-bar loops, which would use our length max. Look for that like next week, I believe. Trig 1.2 is fine. The trig doesn't matter. We're going to use a recorder trig. It's going to completely bypass the trig settings. So over here, we're going to set source 3 to record track 3, because that's the end of our effects chain here, this neighbor track, and turn these inputs off, record length 64. In Rec 1 or Rec 2, we're not going to adjust anything. If the Octatrack wasn't your master clock, you might, maybe, want to turn on this fade for the recording to 0.063, which is the lowest fade you can get. If you have a kick on the 1, and I imagine you do, if you're making any sort of techno or other, dancey electronic music, you often have a kick on the 1. If you do, you will lose the beginning transient of that kick if you use fade in 0.063. It's inevitable. However, your loops will fade perfectly. So if you had, it may not be as noticeable because of that, because you'll have other sounds overlapping, but it will suck away a bit of that transient. Not all of it. It's not going to disappear, but it might be noticeable on the 1 beat of the very first part of a 4-bar loop. So you might not need it. These quantized playbacks, they're not going to matter because we're going to use a playback trigger. So it's going to completely bypass all this information. A, B, C, D right here. This is monitoring for pickup machines. We're not using a pickup machine, so this isn't going to matter. So it won't work. So but while we're in this menu, if we go to our recorder, this becomes our recorder trig. So check it out. If I leave this menu, those triggers disappeared. That's because they're living in here in the recorder trig menu, right? When I'm looking at this menu, the step editor becomes a recording trig editor. So if I put down a recording trig, see if I p-lock the recording trig, how these light up. I can actually p-lock the recording trigger. I could put one in here that says record right here and one here that says record right here. So this would record a recording of this audio and then it would reset the recording and record here. Totally not useful at all, to be honest. I mean, there might be a way of to do this with some sort of ambient stuff that you might be working on or some weird glitchy track, but for the most part, it's not going to do you any good. So what we want to do is we're going to put down a recorder, hold function, hit that recorder, and now it's a one-shot trigger. This trigger has to be activated. So that means it's working. If I hit it, it's ready to be activated. All right, now it's activated. This one-shot recorder right now is set to record source 3, which we have set to record the output of our effects chain. If we go over here, let's put down a trigger, make it a one-shot trigger. And we're going to do the same thing. We want it to record source 3, which is going to be, oh, whoops. I meant to do that on this track. We want this to record source 3, which is set to record track 7, okay? So on here, record track 3, and on here, record track 7. So we don't have a playback trigger on here, so we're not going to hear anything if we record, but we'll at least see the waveforms. Let's go into the audio editor and take a look at these tracks. First, we need to activate them. So I'm going to hit yes to arm all. If I'm looking at the step editor and I hit yes, it just arms the one track. But if I hit yes when I'm outside the step editor, it'll arm all the one-shot triggers, and we only have 2, and they're on these recorders. So here we go, they're recording. All right, let's have a listen to our recordings. Side A, B. Side C, D. Okay, so now we have to create a scene that will listen to these recordings and ignore these machines. So we're gonna make the all scene first. I'm gonna go to scene 16, this is where I always put it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our amp menu. I'm gonna turn this track all the way down to 0. Instead of using the track level, I don't like to use the track level for this part of the effect. I'd rather just turn this amp level down so that it can never be messed with. It can't be bumped by anything. It's at track level -64. And what we're going to do is we're going to lock this scene at 0 volume, and then lock this at 0 volume. So by default, it's always muted, and we move the crossfader over, it brings it back up to unity, which is 0. Then we're going to hold this scene down and go to all these tracks that aren't this track, and then we're going to lock the level at minimum. And then we're going to put a playback trig on track 8 and a playback trig on track 4. But I need to go back to that song. Hold on here. Bang 3, pattern 4, bang 3, pattern 4. All right, we're listening to a recording right now. So let me show you an example of how this would work. So we have, we're gonna do a recording with a bunch of these sounds taken out. So I'm gonna hit yes. We're recording. I'm gonna crossfade over to the recording. Well, hold on a second. Gotta see why that trigger is off. Did I bump the rate somewhere? Let's make sure time stretch is turned off. Oh, okay. It was time stretch. We hit yes. Which one is causing? Let's have this quantized playback. Quantized playback. And oh, I know why it's being so weird. These tracks are all swung and the Octatrack is not swung. So I gotta turn the swing up. I think the swing is at 60. What is the swing setting? 58. Ugh. Because if I double press stop right here, it sends a reset to all of these, and then it resets the Octatrack back to its pattern setting. So we're back to bank 1, pattern 1, because we're working in bank 1, pattern 1. So all these machines just went back to bank 1, pattern 1. So I keep having to go back here. Let me see, what do we have going on? Let's turn that off on these really quick. Just clear that setting. Clear that. Well, a lot of times, like, some of the troubleshooting, like, when it comes to, like, these recording buffers like this, is literally, like, a restart of the Octatrack. If we could save this. Let's just make sure everything is set up the way that we want it to. Record track 7. Yes. This one's recording track 3. There we go. Or not. Let me see. Hang on a second. No, it's not because of the dynamic recorders. Let's just do a quick reset and chat. Always a lot of fun building these complex templates on the Octatrack. Even though I do think the only thing wrong with it is probably just this reset. There we go. Bank 3, pattern 1. I don't know, we could do bank 1, pattern. Just keep this easy, I guess. Bank 1, pattern 16. I still hadn't matched the swings. Once again. All right. Here's a recorded part that doesn't have a vocal line in it. Is my rate bumped? Did I bump retrigger? Did I have the start? What did I bump? Let's just bring the track length all the way up here. Rate. Let's see what the file says. a second. Let me see something here. Do the same thing. Listen back here really quick. Oh my God. I can't even handle this right now. I have bumped my master length to 63. This whole time of going through this awful debugging stage to have it be the master length at 63. It's just playing one step too short. Nobody saw that? Nobody, y'all could have helped me out here. Okay. What a waste of time. Good thing I'm recording this so I can cut it down and edit all that trash out. All right, here we go. Everything worked just as I thought it would work, except for I had bumped the master. All right, let's transition over to our recording. Ah, there we go, flawless. Okay, we're now in our recording. Listen, how it's playing. I'm actually kind of surprised that no one had thought of that watching this, watching me struggle through looking for all the different settings that could have messed it up. The rate could have messed it up. Retrigger could have messed it up. This being micro-timed over, even though that would have been weird, that could have messed it up. The record length could have been wrong. That could have messed it up. The playback trigger could have been on the wrong spot. That could have messed it up. There's all these different things, but it was just the master length. Okay. So now we have two buses, right? Two buses of audio going into a recording buffer, each with their own recording buffer. And now we can make different effects. Like we can make live reverse. Let's do a live reverse. So on this effect, it's going to take those recordings and play them back in reverse. Oh, first we need to copy this scene. Okay, so now we have a live reverse. I'll have all this music play at the same time. Except for that. This is the recording. We can reverse it now. Okay, there's lots of effects we could do here. We could do a modulation. So let's bring the rate down to 48. You know, this is because rate is set to pitch. First, we gotta copy the scene. Paste it. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and we can even add effects to it. I don't know if I would call it deep house. Maybe, actually, you should ask Joe Azarito with this nice comment that he made. Thanks everybody for sticking with me while I'm doing this stuff live. You know, I'm putting myself in a situation where I can forget something or not see that I like dropped something off by one number. You know, I put myself in a position to look like a fool, but but that's life. That's what life is like. That's what doing things live is like. This is the way it is. Ask Joe. Joe, is it deep house? It was just, in my mind, it was dub techno until I added that. To me, this is just dub techno. But once I add this, now it sounds like deep house. Let's make a high pass filter. Track 2, high pass filter. If we take this scene, if we take this high pass filter scene, copy it, paste it, throw some delay behind it, want to see what happens? Something dope. I call it the acid delay in my template. Copy that, paste it. You can throw some reverb behind it. We keep going, we can put a low pass filter in. So as you can see, I was like, right before I started doing the recording buffers and showing how you can record quantized 4-bar loops, I mentioned this is the part that causes the most hiccups, and then I showed you exactly what I meant by that. But at this point in time, we now have a fully working Octatrack template. And what we would do is take this part and we copy it. And we go to part 2 and paste it. We go to part 3 and paste it. We go to part 4 and we paste it. And now that we have all of the parts pasted, which has got like a bunch of random effects, we can delete them, whatever. We can go to part 2 and go like, I don't want this effect or whatever. But we just leave the all effect there because now we have the recording buffers set up and all of these effects set up for 4 different parts. And the thing that we want to change out would be like, you know, maybe we don't want lo-fi effect. Maybe we want a phaser now over here. Maybe over here, we don't want a chorus. Maybe we want a flanger. So now we have some new effects in a new part. We can build new variations, like we could take acid delay or the Circo riser effect and make a new version of it that has a flanger in it instead of a chorus. A new version of the Daft Punk effect or a half note repeat that has distortion on it plus reverb as opposed to a half note that has a flanger on it and a chorus. You know what I mean? Like that's the idea. We have our effects chain. It's pretty fixed in its nature, but we can alter some stuff. We can change some LFOs, change the speed of how some LFOs work. We can add modulation to effects that build up over 4 bars. We can make an effect build up over 8 bars if we want. There's, you know, we're pretty unlimited. Once we have the effects chain set up though, and the recording buffers set up, and our all scene configured, I guess we could configure the other scene while we're at it. Let's go back to part 1 before we conclude. So we have our all scene set up. We could actually just, let's go to scene 14. And what we're gonna do is make it so we listen to a recording of A and B and this side plays live. So I'm gonna go ahead and lock the amp on this side up and these machines down to X level minimum. And that's this scene now. Let's do a recording. We could like play with like this box. So I recorded that, but this machine's playing live. This side's playing live. But this is playing a recorded loop. So I could now unmute some tracks or mute some tracks. Crossfade back over to the live version. So now we do the same thing, but we do it on this side. Volume 0. These machines muted. So now we're listening to a recording of this side, but this side's playing free. So this is doing its thing. We could even play with its pitch if we wanted. But this is still playing live. Now we're playing at an octave down. We can just improvise forever. How cool is this? Totally different vibe. It's the same pattern. We're just improvising right now. This allows you to take one pattern and turn it into a giant production because of the manipulations that we can do live and with these effects. And since our parts are saved, we save them all, we can screw with stuff. And then go function Q and just reload them. We can do some pseudo scratching. Long session. We just hit the 2-hour mark. And we built all the core essential features in the Ultimate Effects template. And we debugged all in 2 hours. Yep. I'm tired. That actually made me a little tired. It's 2 hours of straight up hardcore Octatrack tutorial. If you enjoy these kind of streams where we dive deep into the Octatrack, we're going to dive deep into the Syntact, the Digatone, and the Digitact more separately on their own as well. But if you enjoy this kind of content and you want to be a part of it and support it, join my Discord. I'll have a link in the comments section. Join patreon.com/EZBOT. Get your hands on my template, reverse engineer my effects, figure out how to do this stuff on your own, build your own template. But join the Patreon so I can keep doing this. And we can bounce ideas off each other. Dana had some ideas. Dana was talking quite a bit. Joe, with his very kind comments. Hecklifter, keeping the morale going. Appreciate you very much, Tim. Tim Hecklifter. But yeah, if you enjoy this stuff, join the Patreon. It's really helpful. Join the Discord. Just be a part of the chat. Or you can get a copy of my 64 effects template with all this already figured out and dialed in just like perfectly, and soon to have a MIDI update for controlling it with the Chic and with the Fader Fox EC4. I'm going to do both, but I'm going to start with the Chic first because the Chic is something that's a lot cheaper than a Fader Fox EC4. But the Fader Fox EC4 is a more robust MIDI controller. The thing about the Fader Fox versus the Chic is that the Chic actually has macro controls on a per channel basis with bipolar values. So I can create more effects templates for the Octatrack using the Chic. I can have a single knob that turns up reverb and delay without using a scene. So we could do an effects scene on the Octatrack and manually also turn up the reverb and delay. And I think that's really cool. Or adjust the play time or adjust the time on a delay or something. Like during a delay, as opposed to searching for a delay amongst all the tracks in your Octatrack. Anyhow, that's going to be a part of the template that I release soon, and the new techno template, which is going to have some new effects. Everything's going to be based on 8-bar progressions as opposed to 4-bar progressions like it is here, except for the recordings are going to continue to be 8-bar recordings because they're going to continue to be 4-bar recordings because to do 8-bar quantized recordings in the Octatrack not only requires you to do some like extra setup, but it requires you to do multiple button presses. You have to use the actual recorder trigs on your Octatrack to initiate the recording. You have to hit the button, wait for the recording to start. Once the recording starts, you have to hit the button again. So there's so much action. There's so many actions that are required to do quantized 8-bar recordings on the Octatrack in a live setting, in any setting at all. That's what it requires. But in a live setting, having to remember the order of operations and wait until a recording starts is a lot to do when you're also thinking about bringing in hi-hats, opening up the decay on a hi-hat, bringing in a clap, toning down the EQ on a vocal sample that suddenly you think is too loud or something like that. All that's running through your head while you're playing live, thinking about what's the next song going to be, Think about what you're going to have for dinner later. You know, do they hate me? All that stuff's happening in your head. We don't want to have too many operations that need to happen on the Octatrack, a wild machine to begin with. So we're going to keep it simple with 4 bars. However, the effects will progress over 8 bars. So you're going to have huge, long buildups that you can use to do these really deep techno-style transitions. Because techno is a genre, and dub techno, and minimal techno, and house, but more techno, is a genre of patience. It is a genre of discipline. Discipline and patience, and you really have to wait for things. You have to let things grow. You have to be subtle with things. You can't be too abrupt like you can with electronica. Electronica is a very abrupt and aggressive genre where you can just do glitchy stuff anytime you want. With techno, things take time. You gotta give things time to breathe. It's a subtle, growing, animal, primal thing that happens. So the effects are gonna be more built for that idea. 8 bars, I think, is a sweet spot for this like primal vibe that you get. Anyhow, I'm gonna dive real deep into that once we get there. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on building your own performance template, how I go about all these things, including debugging and the search for everything I would find if perhaps a recording buffer wasn't playing back at the right amount of time. There's a lot of spots I looked at. Take note of those things. That's what you're going to be doing too as you're building this yourself. Unless you do it perfectly, which I hope you do. Besides that, my name's Matthew, aka EZBOT. Join the Patreon. Like this video, please. Like the stream. It really helps it go in the algorithm. It brings people to my channel and it teaches them about the Octatrack. So you're doing everybody a favor when you like a video on my channel, because all this stuff's educational, 99% of the time. You're just doing other people a favor, bringing them over to an educational channel. Coffee.com if you want to get yourself a template without having to do a subscription service. Besides that, leaving a kind comment and liking the video would be doing me a real solid. And also, don't forget, get yourself some of these gorgeous designed right angle and straight slim plug, perfect for self-patching or patching everywhere. 10% off with code EZBOT23 at modbang.com. You want to get yourself one of these risers, like I have on the Octatrack, with this light underneath it, for a beautiful effect. No shame there. We like aesthetics on this channel. That's also at modbang.com. Besides that, you're all very lovely. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Sunday night. I will see you next Sunday at 7 o'clock. Blessings.